What's up, Kyle?
How's it going, Clay?
Good. All right, so Kyle, owner of CrossFit James Island, and Warrior Surf supporter.
Yes, sir.
How did you originally get connected with Warrior Surf?
I've actually been trying to reach out to Warrior Surf for a while, a few years ago, and then Stephanie Dasher started coming to the gym, and then Tiffany, your head yoga instructor, also works out at my gym, so it was just bound to happen, I think, in the end. Chris Willie, who owns Aloha, also has been involved with you guys, so it's always been kind of in my peripheral, and then this year it worked out. So I got to go out on mall with you guys, and that was awesome. So I've always felt like, from the veteran community, it would be good to have like a local gym, an area for the veterans to come, have a place to work out, and have that kind of support through physical exercise as well. So
yeah, and you're a pretty good surfer yourself. Surfed with you some in Guatemala.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I try.
Yeah. How did you, or when did you find your passion for fitness enough to open your own gym?
Well, I started getting into fitness and lifting when I was like 16. A lifelong athlete and soccer and lacrosse player, extreme sports, wakeboarding and snowboarding and things like that. So I always recognized the need to, be in as good a shape as possible. So I really got into it when I was 16, started lifting and kind of doing separate programming from just to get better at sports. And then, that just kind of continued through high school and college. And then I got out, and once you get out of college sports, I saw a lot of my friends stop exercising, which didn't seem like a great strategy overall for life. So I just kind of sought out something that would fill that void of not being able to play college sports anymore. I was a college lacrosse player. And my buddy told me about P90X. I did that for 90 days, but got like way too skinny. I think I was like 180 pounds. I weigh like 205 now. So, and at that point, my buddy told me, hey, you should check out this CrossFit stuff. So I started watching videos. This was back in 2008. And I just immediately fell in love with it. I did a lot of Olympic lifting and weightlifting in college to be a better lacrosse player, and I found I was not a very talented lacrosse player, but I found that through exercising and being much stronger and faster, I could kind of muscle my way through it. So I watched CrossFit videos on my own, worked out on my own, did that for like a year and a half, and then a local gym opened up and I offered to come coach because I had some coaching experience. And I did that for 2 years with them while I was working for Morgan Stanley, and decided I didn't want to ride the desk anymore. So I decided to open my own CrossFit gym. So I moved to Charleston in 2012, me and a buddy, my partner, Chris Hall, and we opened it up in 2012. We did Groupon the first 30 days, and we gathered about 50 clients to that and never looked back.
That's awesome. Speaking of CrossFit, there's a lot of CrossFit haters out there. Talk about how easily it is to get injured in CrossFit, and don't think that it's necessary. What do you like about CrossFit specifically, and how do you think it helps your everyday life and your surfing and staying functional as you get older?
Great question. CrossFit gets a lot of hate, but the CrossFit model is that you pay for an affiliation fee. So you go and take a weekend certification, and then you can go and open up your own CrossFit gym. So that allows, and the owner, the guy who created CrossFit was very much a libertarian, right? So he believed that you should be able to take something and do what you want with it, which is both good and bad, right? So you get a big separation of great gyms, and then you get some gyms that are really bad. And so that's where I think a lot of the CrossFit fail videos you see on YouTube and things like that pop up. And with anything that's kind of competitive, people sacrifice form and technique for just moving quicker. And if you're not in a good CrossFit gym, for instance, if you go into a CrossFit gym and the coach doesn't ask you if you have any injuries, or if you go into a class and the coach is not taking the class through the workout, you leave a lot up to a person who doesn't know anything about lifting. So there's yeah, there's both good and bad aspects to that. So I was fortunate enough, the two owners that own the Brickhouse CrossFit in Roanoke were very good. They did a proper warm up. They stretched everyone out. They did everything right in terms of keeping people as healthy as possible. And so luckily I got to be part of that, and I brought that into my gym. There are dangers, right? With any physical exercise, there's dangers. With surfing, right? Like there's all kinds of things that happen in surfing. But for whatever reason, physical exercise, people will do a movement like a deadlift or something, and they'll tweak their back or they'll hurt themselves, and then they'll say, well, I'll never do that again. And if you get injured in surfing, if a wave knocks you over, right, rarely does anybody say, I'm never doing that again. You just kind of accept that that's part of surfing. And if you're going to get in great shape in any modality, there's going to be a chance that you're going to tweak yourself. So the methodology for me, I always found to be very sound with CrossFit. But the idea that you're going to get in the best shape of your life and you're not going to tweak something seems somewhat silly to me. The best thing that we do is we try and instill like a proper warm up, proper stretching. We hammer technique, and through that, I think that you can safely exercise for a long period of time without really any major injuries. So I've been CrossFitting for, 2008? So like 15 years now. And I've had a little bit of a shoulder tweak. I've had like little tweaks here and there, but nothing major. And that is 15 years of CrossFitting 4 or 5 days a week. That's a lot of hours.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. And so for me, that's it right there. Mm-hmm. And for me, the reason I CrossFit is so that I can go to Guatemala and I can surf for 4 or 5 days in a row for 3 or 4 hours at a time. And I don't have to take a day off. I can do that safely, and I can surf to the best of my abilities. And I don't even have to think about how my physical exercise is going to play into that. So for me, that's, I love to travel and go snowboarding and surfing and all, go hiking and all these things that are very athletic. And so that's where it really hits the nail on the head for me, as far as like a methodology goes.
Yeah, I think one of the ways somebody explained it to me is the safe exercises. A lot of times they're on a linear plane of motion, and that's not everyday life, right? So CrossFit helps prepare you for realistic scenarios in life. You're moving a box, putting it up, and you're not just pushing or pulling. But so that would make sense to me that you would want to train that way. And if you got hurt that way, maybe you would get hurt.
Sure. So like,
life.
Yeah, the basic like exercise. If you go and like work on machines, for instance, right? You're working in like one plane of motion. You're doing one joint at a time, and I don't know about you, but in everyday life, that's rarely the case, right? Where you're just doing one thing over and over again. So the piece that I think is missing out and that kind of training is the balance, is the coordination, is the speed, is the technique, right? When you go get up on a surfboard, it's fast, right? There's not like, okay, I'm gonna now lift this arm and I'm gonna pick one leg up, right? It's gotta be full body, quick movement.
Yeah.
If something bad happens to you, you have to take off on a sprint, right? It's not gonna be a perfect sprint,
Right.
You're gonna be on weird terrain, and one of the things we talk about in class is you're training movement patterns, right? So when I go to do a push-up, I'm thinking about screwing my hands into the ground. When I do a bench press, same thing, or deadlift, I'm exerting force in a specific movement pattern that protects the joints, it tightens the joints. So that when something in life happens, I don't think about that reaction. When I go to grab something, I immediately twist in a certain way. When something is going to hit me, or if I have to step in a certain way, I know that I'm going to plant my foot and twist the knee out in a certain direction. If you ever watch a football player tear their ACL, it's often the knee is like collapsing inward. And so when we're practicing lifts or practicing squats, we're constantly teaching our clients to create movement patterns that protect the joints. So that when something does happen to you and you have to react, you don't think about it, but you immediately go into a good position. Mm-hmm. Same thing with surfing, right? When you stand up, you want to immediately like screw your feet into the surfboard and get into a proper position. And so those little things I think that's where some people like miss out on why you would practice those safe lifts over and over and over again, and you're just hammering proper movement patterns. And yeah, I think that's super helpful.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So I think most people know the obvious benefits to regular exercise, low body fat, keeping your heart healthy. What are some more obscure benefits that you think people don't realize that make regular exercise that much better?
From a mental health perspective, I think it makes a huge difference. I mean, we are designed to move. So the longer you go without moving, the tighter everything gets. And the more tight you are, the less you move, the more you are risking injury. So, when I get in groups of people, I'm in a BNI group, and I'll ask the group, like, who has a long-standing injury, right? And everybody raises their hand. Everybody's got some kind of tweak here and there, back issues, whatever it is. So in my mind, you're either going to be in great shape and have like little tweaks here and there, or you're going to be in bad shape and have little tweaks here and there.
Yeah.
So that I think is one of the benefits, is being in the best shape as possible at all times. And that only comes through physical exercise. Not only that, but people have a hard time sleeping. So if the body is designed to move. So if you're not moving every day, things like sleep start to suffer. People get restless leg syndrome. They're in a bad mood, and exercising is just, that is the drug, right? That's what people are looking for. Everybody wants to take a pill to feel better. But movement is medicine to me. And then when you're moving, you're exercising regularly, you're more likely to eat healthy, right? So I always, talk to people when they come to my gym, they're looking for like exercise, right? So that's like the center of the circle, right? And then they start to get involved with the exercise, and then that branches out. All right, well, how do I improve my lifts? Well, let's look at your sleep. Are you sleeping 8 hours a night? No, I'm sleeping 5. All right, well, let's work on sleep. And so that circle kind of grows. Now we're working on sleep. All right, what else? Are you feeding the body properly? Are you're driving a Lamborghini, are you putting the right gas into it, right? So then it branches out. Oh, now I'll focus on nutrition. And then, all right, well, how's your mental health, right? And then boom, now we're working on meditation and breath work, and we're de-stressing. And so that one thing, I just want to get in better physical condition, branches out, and it kind of snowballs. And I think that's where exercise, like starting with exercise, is a good place to start.
Yeah, doing that, making that one change makes you want to change everything else.
Sure, yeah. Even the people you hang out with.
Yeah, you don't want to go home and eat a cookie right after a good workout. You want to
definitely not
keep it on track. Makes sense. Well, I was going to talk about this last, but since you brought it up in that conversation, let's talk about diet. What diet do you find works for you? And I know that everybody's different and different diets work better for different people. But would you say for the average person, there's a general way of eating or diet that is beneficial that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. If you follow any of like the health gurus and Andrew Hubermans and Joe Rogans, these people that are bringing on really smart health experts, there's a total variety of diets, anything from like carnivore to vegan to keto. There's all kinds of stuff, and then you're intermixing intermittent fasting in there, or long duration fasting. So there's all kinds of like protocols. But as far as nutrition goes, you really just keep it simple, right? If it grows out of the earth, if you can kill it, you can pull it out of a tree, you can pull it out of the ground. That's it, right? If it goes bad, that's the food you want to eat. I think too often we overcomplicate things. Well, I need this protein powder. I need this supplement or that. And I think vitamins and protein powders and all those things have their place, but the core of it should be like somewhat of a paleo type idea. We evolved, living off of the earth, and the more and more we've gotten away from that, the more and more sickness has come in, the more additives there are in food. So organic foods, healthy meats, like, the vegan community will probably get mad at me about this, but I believe that you need protein in your diet, especially as you get older. It is something that is very important, and I get to see a lot of people that are coming to me for help, and one thing that's very obvious is that people are not eating enough. Oftentimes the folks that are trying to lose a lot of fat are really starving themselves in a lot of ways. And one thing that's important to realize is that the human body is designed to keep you alive. So if your body perceives that there's not enough nutrients and calories in the environment, well, muscle is very costly to the system. It requires a lot of calories to be a muscular person. And so if your body perceives there's not enough calories to feed the muscle in your body, well, it will purge muscle very quickly, and it will put on body fat, because that's what's going to keep you alive. You want those big energy stores. And so when people come into the gym and they're trying to lose weight, well, first thing often is to increase the amount of food they're eating and increase the amount of good foods they're eating. And that's usually a big key to getting them healthy.
So you eat, for the most part, paleo, or do you incorporate some grain in there, or?
Yeah, grains have their place. I eat rice, basmati rice. I think that that's really good for you. I'll even add in some things that are not necessarily like paleo, like Greek yogurt. I think is pretty helpful. So yeah, paleo can mean a bunch of different things to people as well, right? And that's where your comment earlier about what works well for you is important. So some ethnicities deal with grains a little bit better. Some people in general, we all have a unique genome. So, and whatever ancestry you came from, some people will work very well with grains, and some people just don't. So yeah, I mean, I'll have the occasional oatmeal and things like that. But for the most part, rice is kind of where rice, quinoa, those things I typically do well. And one of the easiest things you can do is just to try that food out and see how you feel in a few hours. If you eat a big bowl of oatmeal and you feel terrible in 2 hours, chances are that's not great for you.
Don't eat oatmeal.
Yeah. So it's very much like an intuitive thing.
Yeah.
And that's how people can kind of test it, is just try one thing and then see if that makes you feel like crap. If it makes you feel like crap, then that's probably not for you. It doesn't matter if it works for 100 other people. If it makes you feel terrible, do not eat that food anymore.
Yeah. Would you say Whole30 is a pretty good experimental diet to find out what works for you and what doesn't?
For sure. And we do that with people, and I think the best way, I think that's the best for people, because number one, it'll detox you. So a lot of times when our clients do a Whole30 challenge, about a week and a half in, you'll feel terrible. Most people feel very lethargic, and a lot of times it's your body's getting used to the whole foods, and a lot of times you store toxins in your fat. So as you start to get into your fat stores, a lot of those toxins that your body didn't know what to do with, they pushed it into your fat, and when you start chewing up that fat, all those toxins get re-released into your system. But after that week and a half, 2 week mark, usually by the 3rd and 4th week, people feel their energy levels increase. And it really gives you like a solid baseline for how you should feel. Most people are walking around feeling terrible and they don't even know it. That's their baseline. So yeah, this is just how I feel. I get tired at 2:30. I don't feel like doing anything. I'm somewhat lethargic. You're not eating enough calories, so you feel lethargic from that. And so that Whole30 kind of creates that baseline for people, and then they can start adding in like the supplements and the extra things. So yeah, it is a great baseline.
Gotcha. When you exercise, what kind of ratio are you looking at for cardio, for heavy lifting, for HIIT training, and how much time a week do you think you spend actively exercising and not coaching?
Good question. So our classes are an hour long. And people see that and they're like, oh, an hour? You're exercising for an hour? We do warming up, and then we'll do a little bit of mobility work, and then we'll do some like heavier weight warm-ups, and then we'll get into like some strength components and some high intensity workouts. So on average, working out, I only work out 4 or 5 hours a week, 4 or 5 classes a week. I do exactly what I recommend to our members, and I rarely do anything extra. And I'll often take one of those days off if there's good surf out, because that's why I'm training, so that I can go enjoy life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, take the day off. So yeah, I mean, so 4 or 5 hours a week, and the strength and high intensity portion is maybe like 30 minutes of that. So yeah, not a ton, like 3 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really pretty manageable. So yeah, I mean, people tell me they don't have the time. I'm like, well, it's not a priority, right? It's not that you don't have the time, it's just not a priority.
Right. So you work out total 4 to 5 hours a week, and you have a strength component and a cardio component in those workouts.
Yeah, so we maybe have like 2 days of like just strength work, and then there'll maybe be like 3 days of like high intensity work, and obviously that's like cardio and weightlifting, so it's kind of like some combination of the two. And then if there's a day I want to just go on a long run, that's great. One of the hard things that we run into as far as the gym goes is longer duration, like zone 2 training, and that's something that we recommend to people outside of the gym. If your goal is to ultimately lose fat, that's a great way to do it. As far as like heart health goes, that's amazing. And zone 2 training, for those of you who don't know, is if you take 180 minus your age, that's where you want to keep your heart rate. It's basically conversational pace. So if you go on a jog, you should be able to have a conversation with somebody, and that improves heart efficiency and oxygen efficiency as well. So that's really good for longevity also. I don't do a ton of that. This idea of like doing that, it used to be much bigger. When I first opened the gym, people wanted cardio. I need to do cardio. But lifting is a huge amount of cardio, right? When your whole body is under tension, under a heavy load, your heart is trying to pump blood to your extremities while they're under tension. So it's really increasing the strength of your heart doing that. And then on top of just high intensity work, right? Maybe 10 minutes. You do a 10-minute workout under pretty high intensity, you feel it. You don't feel the need to go out and run 6 miles afterwards. And we talked a little bit about injuries and what people deem as like healthy exercise and what is scary to people from like an injury perspective. And oftentimes, we'll have athletes that like, oh, I just want to do some running on the side, but tons of runners. Running is like anything else. There is a form that goes with running. You are not built to, you are built to go run, but there's technique involved. And most people don't have any of that technique. So they think it's perfectly safe to go out and hit the pavement for 3 miles or a 5K, but there's no technique work. And the where most people run is on asphalt. So you have poor technique mixed with hard surfaces, and it's the same movement pattern over and over. So you get a lot of overuse injuries from that. You're hitting the knee in the same spot. If your technique is off, you're hitting the knee in the same spot with bad technique. And so, little things like that build up. And people injure themselves all the time running. And we talked about the CrossFit thing earlier. Rarely do you hear somebody injure themselves on a run or get like plantar fasciitis or, a little bit of knee discomfort, and they'll say, I'm never running again. And it's like, well, no one ever says that. So, or no one believes that. Most people feel like they're going to have to run at some point in their lives. So, yeah.
I'm glad you feel that way.
Yeah.
Not a fan of running too often.
Yeah. If you're going to do like longer cardio and you want to take the impact off your joints, I recommend an Echo bike from Rogue. Those things are brutal. Assault bikes are good. Rowing is really good. Low impact. Swimming. There's a lot of things that you can do that are low impact that will improve your cardio. That won't wreck your knees and back. And if you're 30, 40 pounds overweight too, and you're going on runs, that's brutal. It's brutal on your body.
Destroying all your cartilage.
Yeah.
Could get on a surfboard and paddle.
Yeah.
The distance of the island.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Get some cardio.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about people that are getting a little older and think maybe they don't have the time, or they don't want to get injured, or used to go in the gym and bench 315 and now they can barely do a push-up. What are some tips you would have for people that are trying to exercise but just don't think they can fit it in their schedule, or just don't feel like they have the body for it anymore?
My email has a sign on it that says find time to be healthy now, or find time to be sick later.
I saw that and I love it.
Yeah. So, and that's the truth, right? You don't have time to be healthy now. When you get sick, you will find that time, right? When you are, you get diabetes or things like that, there's no like, I don't have time for diabetes. You're going to find time for diabetes, and you have to start going and taking the insulin shots and going to the doctors to get checked up. So it's coming. I think that nutrition and sleep, those are 90% of the battle. And so by just taking care of those things, if you don't have time to exercise, but you can eat well, that clears up a host of problems for people. So if you can do that, that's 90% of it. And then the next 10% is just getting out and doing some exercise. If you don't have time for it, my suggestion is you find time, right? Like I mentioned earlier, like I'm working out like 3 to 5 hours a week. It's not crazy. Get up a little earlier, go to bed a little sooner. There's really no excuse to stop moving, and I can't, in good conscience, give anybody advice on you don't have to exercise, because things are getting tight. You're losing muscle, especially as you get older. There's something called sarcopenia that sets in, which is the loss of muscle mass over time. So as you start getting over 30, 40, 50 years old, you will start to lose muscle over time, and that is detrimental to people's health for sure. When old people talk about breaking hips, I always thought that it was something that happened in the body as far as like breaking your hip that caused a host of health issues. But often when people break their hips, the reason that's a death sentence is because you're immobile. So they did a study one time that I found was pretty interesting. They took a group of people in their 60s and they had them work out. I think it was like 3 to 5 hours a week for 6 months. And they recorded how much muscle they put on during that time. And then they put them on bed rest for 10 days. And they lost all gains from that 6 months. So it takes 10 days of not being active to lose 6 months worth of progress.
It's not a lot of time.
No, it's not a lot of time. And it shows you that there's no stopping. You cannot stop. For the rest of your life, you have to keep doing this. It's like you have to keep brushing your teeth, you have to keep eating your food, you have to keep sleeping. It's never gonna stop. And if you do, that's not great. That is setting yourself up for failure, right? You can't stop paying your taxes, right? You can't stop feeding your kids. There's just things that you have to keep doing for the rest of your life. So my suggestion for people, and I think this is where the gym comes in handy, this is where Warrior Surf comes in handy, is to find a group of people that have health as their priority and surround yourself with people like that, because it definitely affects you. If you're around people that are exercising all the time, if you're around people that are texting you, hey, let's go to the beach and surf, if you're around a group of great people, that takes a lot of the pressure off, because even subconsciously you just see people exercising, you see people eating healthy, and you will eat healthy, right? It's like that friend that you have that always goes out to the bar and is constantly texting you, right? Like if you have 4 or 5 friends that are like that, chances are that's how you're going to be, right? Mm-hmm. Your mom was right. You are a mixture of your 5 closest friends. So surround yourself with great people.
Yeah, I like that. I like that advice. I hope to be one of the people saying, let's go surf all the time. What would you say is the best way to prevent silly injuries as you get older? Would you say a little more focus on mobility, a little more focus on warming up, sauna or cold plunge, mixture of it, or is there anything as you get older that you think you need to spend a little more time on that you didn't before?
Like I mentioned, the sarcopenia thing, strength training. Above, cardio is important, but like I mentioned, you'll get some cardio from heavy lifting, but as you get older, you want to protect your joints, right? And that's often a misconception, right? Like, I don't want to do heavy squats because I'm worried about my joints. Well, it's a little bit misplaced, right? The muscles surrounding your joints provide shock absorption for your joints. So you can imagine taking a bike that has good shock absorbers out onto a bumpy road. It's going to feel much better than if you take a bike that doesn't have any shock absorbers, right? You're just going to be rattling on the frame. And that's what happens to humans, right? You have no muscle surrounding your joints. And we mentioned running on pavement. You can imagine a bike without shock absorbers. You're just rattling the joints and rattling the frame until bolts start falling off and chains start slipping and that kind of thing. So we mentioned movement patterns earlier. So solid strength training with good movement patterns is going to be huge for you as you get older. You mentioned the sauna and the cold plunge, mobility. So yeah, all those things, right? Proper warm up is the first thing I see people cut out, right? We concentrate the first like 20, 30 minutes of the class is warming up, gradually increasing weight. So you're prepping your nervous system for that workout, stretching, and those things are all equally important to a solid workout. When you go into the gym and you don't warm up at all, your joints are tight. You can think about like stretching a cold rubber band versus a warm rubber band. It's going to be much more elastic and forgiving if you make a mistake than if you go in and you're just stiff. So that makes a difference. The sauna is a great way to open everything up, right? Saunas vasodilate everything, so it really heats up the entire body and provides for a lot of blood flow and circulation. And that's the same with exercising. That movement provides blood flow and circulation. The cold plunge that would be an example of like tightening everything down, right? But what cold plunge does is it shrinks everything in your internal system, causes a huge hormone release, and flushes out your lymphatic system. So that's really helpful as far as mental health goes and hormonal release. I think that stuff's important for overall mood. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all kind of equally important, but if I could say one thing as far as training goes, you need to make sure you're lifting to protect the joints so you don't fall and break your hip. You need to have good grip strength. That's an indicator for longevity, actually. And the reason for that is not because there's anything specific about grip strength that means you're going to live longer, but when you go to fall, if you can catch yourself, that's what prevents you from falling. If you're used to doing balance work and doing that strength training, when you fall, you're more likely to react and catch yourself. So that's like a silly injury, right? And we mentioned earlier, like the little things about like movement patterns and creating safe movement patterns in people, and bracing your core under a load, right? So a lot of silly injuries come from like getting down to pick up a child or something heavier, you're reaching for something. And if those movement patterns are ingrained in you, then you brace your core as you're going to pick that kid up. You're used to decelerating your speed in the gym. So, when you trip over something and you go to catch yourself with your foot or your knee or you go into a lunge, you're ready for that kind of movement. And it just protects you that way versus if you don't, let's say you are like 30, 40 pounds overweight and you get into a lunge position that's deeper than you're used to, your chances are you're going to fall and you're going to fall much harder. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, your gym has a cold plunge and a sauna, and it seems like you know what you're doing. So if anybody wanted to get in touch with you or come try a workout, how could they do that?
Yeah, so we offer, for like the CrossFit gym itself, we offer an on-ramp program for new people. It's 4 sessions, it's one-on-one with a coach, and that allows us to go through the movements with people under lightweight. It allows us, the coaches, to see how you move, to address any injuries or any modifications we have to do during class. So it's a very easy way to kind of take some of the anxiety from coming into a CrossFit gym out of the picture. You'll get familiar with the gym, familiar with the coaches, the people, so you kind of already have a friend going into it. And so that's how we kind of bring people into our CrossFit classes. And then as far as like the sauna and cold plunge goes, we offer that as an addition to our memberships. We also offer it to the public. We're only offering like 10 people to come use those that are not members of the gym, just because we don't want to overcrowd the sauna and cold plunge with people who are not part of the general community. But they can contact us for pricing on that, and people are welcome to come try it out as well, to kind of get a feel for whether or not they want to get in cold water every morning.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's CrossFit James Island.
Yeah.
You guys have a website. I'm sure it's pretty easy to find if you were to just Google it.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Clay.
Yeah.